My name is Gavin Miller. I'm 38 years old, and I work as a quantitative analyst for a major financial firm in Boston, Massachusetts. For 8 years, I thought I had built something solid with my wife, Veronica Hayes. We met during graduate school back in 2015, married in 2017, and I genuinely believed we shared the same professional dreams. I contributed every dime I earned to our life together. I even used part of my father's retirement bonus to help buy our loft in the Seaport District in 2019. It was a modest 2-bedroom unit in a renovated warehouse. Nothing ostentatious, but it was ours. The purchase price was $780,000, which was considered a steal for that area of the city. I've always been the reserved, analytical type. I don't raise my voice. I don't look for confrontations, and I solve problems with patience and logic, the same way I approach modeling financial data. My employers respect that about me, and I thought my wife did too. Looking back now, I realized that what I saw as a strength, she must have seen as a weakness. That was my first mistake. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I thought it was stable. We had our routines. I'd review complex spreadsheets in the evenings while she worked on her laptop, running a specialized data cleaning service for academic researchers. We'd share dinner, watch documentaries, talk about our day's data insights, normal couple stuff. At least, that's what I believed was happening. The first signs appeared in early 2024. Veronica started taking trips, industry conferences, she called them, weekend getaways for specialized networking and attending AI ethics workshops. She came back with expensive software licenses, high-end technical gear, and designer clothes that seemed far above what her freelance income could afford. When I asked about it, she'd smile and say she had made new contacts and secured highly lucrative contracts. I believed her. That was my second mistake. Then came the financial irregularities. Small at first, $500 here, $1,000 there, transfers from our joint investment portfolio that didn't match our usual strategy. When I mentioned it, Veronica became defensive. You're micromanaging me, Gavin. I need some freedom to invest in my business, too. So I backed off. I always backed off. That was becoming a pattern. If you enjoy stories of cold, calculated revenge and intense plot twists, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. We have new untold stories every day, each one more intense than the last. 2 months ago. In early July of 2025, everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The summer heat was oppressive, and I was optimizing a complex risk model for a new client. Veronica had been unusually quiet during dinner, picking at her food and constantly checking her phone. I should have recognized the signs, but I was focused on my work, thinking about the unit risk assessment that I needed to update. Gavin, we need to talk, she said. Her tone was different, cold, almost businesslike. She wasn't looking at me, just staring intently at a spot on the kitchen wall behind my head. I put down my pen and gave her my full attention. What's on your mind? She took a deep breath, and what followed felt rehearsed, practiced, as if she had told herself this in the mirror dozens of times. I want a divorce. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. Years of financial modeling had trained me to control my reactions, especially when dealing with unexpected market volatility. All right, I said softly. We can talk about what's wrong, what we can work on. She shook her head. There's nothing to work on. I'm done. I've already spoken to a lawyer. She had already spoken to a lawyer. Of course she had. This wasn't a conversation. It was a notification. I see, I said. What are you thinking in terms of the asset distribution? That's when her mask slipped, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Pure, cold calculation. The loft will be mine. I contributed to it, too, and I need stability during this transition. I want 70% of the joint investment portfolio, and you'll pay me spousal support for 5 years. My lawyer says it's reasonable, considering I gave up lucrative career opportunities to support your focused work schedule. Every demand felt like another slap in the face. The loft my father had helped us buy. The investment portfolio I'd filled with my $12,000 a month analyst salary while she claimed to be building her business. Spousal support for a woman who had never sacrificed her career, aspirations in any meaningful way, but it was her final statement that truly revealed who she had become. She looked me straight in the eyes for the first time that evening, and her smile conveyed absolute contempt. "You're just an analyst, Gavin. You don't have the liquidity for a real litigation firm. You can't fight me on this." I sat there for a long moment, processing what I had just heard, not just the legal demands, but the disdain behind them, the assumption that I was powerless, the belief that 8 years of marriage could be dissolved with such cruelty. "I understand," I finally said. She looked surprised by my calm response. Perhaps she expected anger, tears, desperate negotiation. Instead, I simply nodded. "I'll need some time to process this. We can review the specifics in a few days." "Sure," she said. But her smile suggested she thought the conversation was already over, that I had accepted defeat before the battle had even begun that night. As Veronica slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. She was right about one thing. I didn't have the liquid capital for an expensive litigation attorney. My analyst salary was comfortable but not extravagant. Her lawyer would cost more per hour than I made in a day. But she was wrong about something far more important. She assumed I had no options, no resources, and no one to turn to. She had forgotten about my brother, Vincent Miller, my older brother by 4 years, and one of the most feared corporate litigators in New York City. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. Not since our mother's funeral in 2016, when we had an ugly argument about family versus professional balance. He thought I was wasting my potential modeling data. I thought he was a corporate shark with no soul. We were probably both right. But Vincent was also brilliant, ruthless, and expensive. He was the kind of lawyer who charged $1,500 per hour in 2025 and was worth every penny. He specialized in high-profile corporate dissolution and liability cases, representing major financial institutions and Fortune 500 CEOs. His reputation was built on finding weaknesses in opposing cases and exploiting them with surgical precision. The legal community respected him. His opponents feared him. The morning after Veronica's ultimatum, I sat in my home office reviewing everything I knew about our finances. As a quant analyst, I am trained to analyze data, to reconstruct financial narratives from scattered documents. I applied those same skills to my marriage, and what I found was troubling. Over the past 18 months, there had been consistent large-sum transfers from our joint investment account, always in amounts just below $5,000, likely to avoid triggering bank notifications. The timing often coincided with her supposed weekend conferences. But more interesting were the credit card charges I had never paid attention to before. Expensive software purchases, major server rentals, specialized consulting fees in Silicon Valley on days when she claimed to be attending those women's retreats. I called my friend Sam Johnson, a CPA who had helped me with tax preparation for years. "Sam, I need a favor. Can you look at some bank statements?" Unofficial consultation. "What's going on, Gavin?" "Veronica wants a divorce. I need to understand our financial landscape before I respond." He agreed to meet that afternoon. When I showed him the evidence, Sam whistled softly. "Gavin, this looks like a systematic diversion of marital assets. These patterns suggest she's been funding a full-scale, competitive startup or a major business venture. How significant are we talking?" He did some quick calculations. "Based on these transfers and charges, at least $250,000 over 18 months, maybe more if she has other accounts you don't know about. $250,000. That was nearly all of our joint investment. Portfolio money I had assumed was growing steadily for our future. Money that was apparently being funneled into a secret enterprise. That same afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked up my own brother. His firm's website was impressive. Miller and Associates, specializing in complex corporate dissolution. Client testimonials praised his thoroughness and results. Legal blogs mentioned his recent high-profile case victories. He had built exactly the career he had always wanted. His success stung a little. While I had been content with my modest analyst life, he had become a legal powerhouse. But pride was a luxury I couldn't afford now. I found his direct office number and stared at my phone for 20 minutes before dialing. It rang 3 times. Vincent Miller. His voice was deeper than I remembered. More authoritative, the voice of someone accustomed to being in control. Vincent, it's Gavin. A long pause. Gavin, it's been a while. 9 years, I said. 9 years, he agreed. What's the occasion? I could hear the caution in his tone. We had parted on such bitter terms that a favor seemed impossible. I need help, I said. Legal help. Another pause. What kind of legal help? Veronica wants a divorce. She's making demands that seem aggressive. I believe she's been diverting joint investment capital to fund a secret business venture. The line went silent for so long. I thought he might have hung up. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from cautious to cautiously interested. That's a serious accusation, Gavin. Are you sure? I have documentation, portfolio transfers, major vendor invoices, and specialized consulting charges. Sam Johnson reviewed them and believes there's a pattern. Sam is good, Vincent said slowly. If he sees something, it's worth looking into. But Gavin, I need to ask you, why are you calling me? We haven't exactly been close. The question hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I could cross. Because despite everything that happened between us, you're still my brother. And because she looked me in the eye and told me I was powerless, I'd like to prove her wrong. Another long pause. When Vincent spoke again, there was something different in his voice. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. All right, I'll take a preliminary look. No promises, but send me what you have. If there's something there, we'll discuss terms. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when we win. For the next few weeks, I became a forensic accountant of my own life. Every receipt, every statement, every financial record went into carefully organized files. Vincent's initial review was promising enough that he agreed to take the case, though he cautioned me that Veronica's lawyer might be more formidable than expected. Stanley Morris doesn't take cases he can't win, Vincent told me during our first official meeting. If he's confident, it means Veronica has convinced him that she is in the right. That might work to our advantage if we can prove she's been lying to him too. Vincent hired an investigator, a former NYPD detective named Rob Tillman, to track Veronica's activities while Rob worked. Vincent prepared our counter-strategy. The relationship between us remained formal, professional, but I could catch glimpses of the brother I remembered in the way he explained legal concepts, patient but thorough. The key, he said, is not just to prove she took the money. It's to prove she did it deliberately to defraud the marriage while planning to dissolve the partnership. That transforms this from a property dispute to a case of fraud and corporate embezzlement. 3 weeks after the investigation began, Rob hit the jackpot. The expensive software purchases weren't random. They followed a pattern, always aligning with cities where a man named Victor Vance traveled for business. Victor was a competitive logistics consultant based in Seattle, with a portfolio that showed him at conferences in the exact same cities where Veronica claimed to be attending AI ethics retreats. She's been seeing this guy for over a year, Rob reported. Server rental records show they've been partnering on a new venture. The large transfers coincide with major operational deadlines in his company. She's not just having an affair, Gavin. She's been funding a secret rival startup with your capital. Vincent leaned back in his leather chair, studying the evidence spread across his desk. This changes the entire dynamic. Maurice thinks he's handling a routine corporate dissolution with an advantageous settlement. He has no idea his client has been committing fraud. What do we do with this? We wait. Let them file their petition with all their confident demands. Then we respond with evidence they never saw coming. The shock value alone will be worth the element of surprise. The first hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late July at the Boston Superior Court Family Division. Veronica had been pushing for a quick resolution, likely hoping to catch me off guard before I could mount a proper defense. Her lawyer, Stanley Morris, was known for aggressive tactics and intimidating opposing counsel who couldn't afford prolonged litigation. They expected me to show up alone, overwhelmed, and ready to agree to whatever terms they offered. They were about to be in for the surprise of their lives. I arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 a.m., 30 minutes before our scheduled hearing. The building was imposing, all granite and austere governmental architecture, designed to remind everyone inside that justice was a serious affair. I wore my best suit, the navy blue one I reserved for major client presentations. I felt nervous, but also strangely calm. Everything was out of my hands now. Veronica was already in the hallway with Maurice, reviewing documents. She had dressed for battle, an elegant black pantsuit, hair severely pulled back, the kind of look that said she meant business. When she saw me approaching, her expression was almost compassionate, as if she were about to do something unpleasant but necessary. "Gavin," she said with false warmth, "I hope you've had time to consider our proposal. We can still settle this amicably." Morris stepped forward. He was exactly as I had expected. Expensive suit, aggressive handshake, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Mr. Miller, I'm Stanley Maurice. I represent your wife. I understand you are proceeding without representation." "Actually," I said, checking my watch, "my counsel should be here any minute." Veronica's eyebrows raised slightly. "Counsel, Gavin, I thought we discussed this. You can't afford... She stopped mid-sentence. Her face went completely white. Vincent had arrived. He walked down the courthouse hallway as if he owned it, which in many ways he did. Impeccable, charcoal gray suit, Italian leather briefcase, the kind of presence that made other lawyers step aside. At his age, my brother had the bearing of someone who had never lost a case he cared about winning. His reputation preceded him into every room. "Apologies for the delay," he said, extending his hand toward me. I-93 traffic was impossible. Morris's face had gone through several interesting color changes. "Vincent Caldwell. You are representing Mr. Miller." "Oh, I am. Gavin Miller is my client." Vincent's smile was professional but direct. "And my brother." The silence that followed was deafening. Veronica looked like she might faint. Morris was rapidly recalculating every assumption he had made about this case. Other lawyers in the hallway had stopped their conversations to stare. Everyone knew who Vincent was. "I was unaware Mr. Miller had retained counsel of your caliber," Maurice said carefully. "Well, now you know. Shall we go in? I believe Judge Reeves is waiting." The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, but it felt like a coliseum. Judge Sarah Reeves was known for running an efficient docket and having little patience for dramatics. She had been on the family bench for 15 years and had seen every dirty trick in the book. "Good morning," she said as we took our seats. "I have a petition for dissolution filed by Ms. Veronica Hayes. Miller against Mr. Gavin Miller. Ms. Miller is represented by Mr. Morris. Mr. Miller is represented by Mr. Vincent Miller." "This is unusual, Your Honor," Maurice began. "We are seeking a straightforward dissolution with terms we believe are reasonable." Given the circumstances of the marriage, Judge Reeves nodded. "Mr. Miller, I assume you have a response." Vincent rose fluidly to his feet. "Indeed, Your Honor. We are filing a counterclaim that includes several serious allegations. My client has uncovered evidence of systematic diversion of joint investment assets by Ms. Miller to fund a secret commercial venture with a third party. We are requesting a full corporate audit, the reimbursement of misappropriated funds, and sanctions against the petitioner for fraudulent concealment." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Morris was frantically shuffling papers, clearly caught completely by surprise. Veronica had gone pale again, her hands clutching the edge of the table. "That is a serious accusation, Mr. Miller," Judge Reeves said. "Do you have documentation to support these claims?" "Extensive documentation, Your Honor. Portfolio transfer records, vendor invoices, server rental agreements, and photographic evidence of Ms. Miller's partnership activities over the past 18 months. We also have the testimony of a private investigator regarding Ms. Miller's relationship with a Mr. Victor Vance of Seattle, Washington, concerning a direct competitor in the data analytics field." I watched Veronica's face crumble. The mention of Victor's name and the data analytics competitor hit her like a physical blow. Morris leaned in to whisper urgently in her ear, but she barely responded. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Judge Reeves reviewed the initial paperwork. "Ms. Hayes, are you prepared to respond to these allegations?" Maurice stood up, trembling slightly. "Your Honor, we require time to review these claims. We were not prepared for this level of complexity in what we anticipated to be a routine dissolution." "Mr. Morris," Judge Reeves said, "your client made very specific financial demands in her initial petition. 70% of marital assets, 5 years of spousal support, and exclusive ownership of the marital home. Those demands suggest she was very much prepared for complexity." Vincent stepped forward. "Your Honor, if I may, Ms. Hayes's demands become particularly interesting when viewed in light of her spending patterns. She is requesting the majority of the investment portfolio while simultaneously having transferred approximately $250,000 of joint funds into an external, undisclosed business venture. This is not a petition for dissolution, Your Honor. It is attempted corporate larceny." The phrase "attempted corporate larceny" hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Even I had to admire Vincent's flair for the dramatic. Morris looked like he wanted to object, but he had nothing to object to. The facts were the facts. Judge Reeves set down her papers. "I'm going to order a full forensic audit of both parties' assets and corporate expenditures over the past 2 years. I will also appoint a receiver to ensure all marital and business assets are properly accounted for. Ms. Hayes, you are prohibited from disposing of any marital property or joint investment funds pending the resolution of this matter. We will reconvene in 8 weeks to review the audit results and proceed with mediation if both parties can reach an agreement." As the hearing concluded, I could see Veronica's entire strategy collapsing in real time. Her confident demands had been replaced by legal risk. Her quick settlement had turned into a prolonged investigation. Her assumption that I was powerless had been shattered by the presence of a man in an expensive suit. Outside the courtroom, Maurice pulled Veronica aside for what looked like a very unpleasant conversation. I could see her gesticulating frantically, likely trying to explain why she hadn't mentioned the secret business transfers or the partnership with Victor. Maurice kept shaking his head, clearly realizing that his client had lied to him about material facts. Vincent watched them with clinical interest. "He's about to quit the case," he murmured. "How do you know?" "Body language. He's realizing she's made him look incompetent in front of Judge Reeves. Morris has a reputation to protect. He's not going to let a lying client destroy it." Sure enough, Morris walked away from Veronica and headed toward the parking garage without looking back. She was left alone on the courthouse steps, looking lost and desperate. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "What happens now?" I asked Vincent. He packed his briefcase methodically. "Now we wait for the audit results and prepare for the final hearing." She wanted a war, Gavin, but wars have consequences. She's about to learn what it costs to underestimate a Miller. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. It felt good. The 8 weeks between hearings passed with an intensity I had never experienced. The court-ordered forensic audit was conducted by a specialist accountant. Every transaction, every portfolio transfer, every corporate invoice was examined in microscopic detail. Meanwhile, Rob continued to compile evidence on Veronica's partnership with Victor Vance. What we uncovered exceeded even our worst expectations. The audit revealed that Veronica had diverted almost $310,000 over 18 months. Not the $250,000 we had initially calculated. She had opened a secret commercial line of credit using falsified company documents and used our joint investment portfolio to make the interest payments. She had also attempted to forge my name on a major client contract application without my knowledge. But the most damaging evidence came from Victor Vance himself. Rob had located him at a logistics summit in San Francisco. Confronted with the possibility of being named as a co-defendant in a massive corporate fraud and forgery case, Victor decided that cooperation was his best option. He provided detailed records of their new venture, including internal emails, business plans, and financial forecasts. Veronica had told Victor she was already divorced and was simply reinvesting her portion of the settlement. She had been lying to everyone, including her partner. 2 weeks before our return hearing, Maurice formally withdrew as Veronica's counsel, citing irreconcilable differences regarding case strategy. In simple terms, he had discovered she'd lied to him about material facts, making it impossible for him to ethically represent her. She was forced to find new representation on short notice, finally settling for a nervous junior lawyer from a low-level firm named Perry Hayes, who specialized in small claims, not complex corporate fraud cases. During this period, something unexpected happened between Vincent and me. The professional relationship began to thaw into something more personal. We started meeting for dinner to discuss the case, but our conversations would drift to other topics. The argument that had divided us in 2016 seemed smaller now, less important than the fact that we were family. One evening, while reviewing documents in his office, Vincent put down his pen and looked directly at me. "Gavin, I need to tell you something. When you called me after all those years, you don't know what it meant to me. I thought I'd lost you forever." His words caught me off guard. My older brother, always so controlled and professional, was showing a vulnerability I had never seen. "I owe you an apology, too," I said. "What I said at Mom's funeral about your career choices, I was wrong. You've built something impressive here." Vincent stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "And I was wrong about analysis being a waste of your talent. You found your lane, your purpose, that matters more than making money." It wasn't a complete reconciliation. 9 years of silence don't vanish overnight. But it was a start, and for the first time in almost a decade, I felt like I had my brother back. In early September, we returned to the Boston courthouse for the final hearing. The contrast was stark. Where Veronica had once appeared confident and in control, she now looked haggard and desperate. Her new lawyer, the nervous young Perry Hayes, was clearly out of his depth. His hands shook as he organized his papers, and he kept glancing at Vincent like a rabbit watching a wolf. Judge Reeves reviewed the audit results with the thoroughness they deserved. The numbers were damning, but it was the pattern that told the real story: systematic deceit, continuous fraud, and a complete betrayal of joint professional trust. "Ms. Hayes," Judge Reeves said, "the evidence suggests you have diverted substantial joint investment capital for personal business gain during a clandestine corporate partnership. Do you dispute these findings?" "No," Perry Hayes whispered urgently to Veronica before rising. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges certain financial irregularities, but maintains that her requests for asset division remain reasonable." Vincent immediately stood. "Your Honor, Ms. Hayes did not commit financial irregularities. She committed the felonies of fraud and forgery. She forged my client's signature on commercial line of credit applications, opened secret investment vehicles, and stole from their joint portfolio to fund a competitive business venture she has maintained for over a year. This is not a marital dissolution. It is a matter that could result in criminal liability." The mention of criminal liability hit the courtroom like lightning. Perry went pale. Veronica gripped the table so tightly her knuckles were white. And even I felt the weight of it. Vincent wasn't just destroying her civil case. He was threatening her freedom. Judge Reeves's expression was serious. "Mr. Miller, are you suggesting this court should refer this matter to the U.S. Attorney's Office?" "I'm suggesting, Your Honor, that Ms. Hayes's actions constitute fraud and forgery under the criminal code. However, my client is primarily interested in recovering his diverted assets and dissolving this marriage without further financial damage, provided a fair settlement is reached through mediation." It was masterful. Vincent was offering Veronica a way out of criminal charges, but only if she abandoned her ridiculous demands and accepted reasonable terms. The threat was implicit but clear. Take the deal or face. Prosecution. Perry requested a brief recess to consult with his client. I watched them huddle in the corner, Veronica gesticulating frantically while Perry repeatedly shook his head. When they returned, her fight was gone. The confident woman who had delivered her ultimatum 2 months ago had been replaced by someone desperate to avoid jail. "Your Honor," Perry said quietly, "my client is prepared to accept a revised settlement through mediation." The final terms bore no resemblance to Veronica's original demands. She received no spousal support. The loft would be sold with the proceeds, divided 50/50ths, after she reimbursed the diverted funds. She kept her personal possessions and half of what remained in our legitimate joint savings after reimbursing the fraudulent expenses. She was also required to pay Vincent's legal fees, which totaled $32,000. Most importantly, she signed a comprehensive release acknowledging her financial misconduct and waiving any future claims against me. When Judge Reeves signed the divorce order, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The marriage was over, but so was the uncertainty, the betrayal, and the fear of financial ruin. Outside the courthouse, Veronica approached me one last time. Victor Vance had dumped her when the legal trouble started. Her business friends had distanced themselves when the scandal broke, and her reputation was in ruins. She looked broken, much older than her 35 years. "Gavin," she said softly, "I never wanted it to come this far." I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the woman I had married, trying to reconcile that memory with the person who had tried to destroy me. "Yes, you did, Veronica. You wanted it to come exactly this far. You just didn't expect me to fight back." She had nothing to say to that. A week later, I moved into a small but comfortable condo in the Back Bay neighborhood, not far from my firm. It was mine. The purchase price was $850,000, and the mortgage payments were manageable on my analyst salary. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely content with my living situation. But the most important change in my life wasn't the condo or the financial resolution. It was the relationship I had rebuilt with my brother. Vincent and I started meeting for dinner every few weeks, gradually bridging the gap that 9 years of silence had created. We talked about our mother, about the argument that had separated us in 2016, and about the different paths we had chosen. "You know," he said during one of our dinners in a downtown restaurant, "I always wondered if you'd made the right choice, staying in analysis. Now, I think maybe you did. You have something I don't have. What's that? Peace. Integrity. You became exactly who you wanted to be, not who circumstances forced you to be." It was the first time in our adult lives my older brother had expressed respect for my choices. It meant more than any legal victory. Last week, I received word that Veronica had moved to San Francisco, starting over with a new identity and whatever was left of her resources. Victor Vance had apparently moved on to his next unsuspecting partner. The loft we had shared was sold to a young couple with small children, who would fill it with laughter and hope instead of lies and betrayal. I never saw her again, and I never wanted to. The experience taught me something valuable about appearances and assumptions. Veronica had looked at me and seen weakness where there was actually strength. She had assumed isolation where there was actually family. She had mistaken my quiet nature for powerlessness, not realizing that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who make no noise. I'm still working as a quant analyst in Boston, still reviewing datasets and discussing market stability with colleagues who think they understand conflict, but I understand it differently now. I know that the most decisive battles aren't always fought with raised voices and dramatic gestures. Sometimes they're won with patient preparation, careful documentation, and knowing when to make the right phone call. And I know that family, even complicated family, is worth more than pride. My name is Gavin Miller. I'm 38 years old, and I am exactly where I need to be. Veronica tried to take everything from me, but in the end, she gave me something more valuable than anything she could have stolen. She gave me back my brother, the best revenge. I learned isn't always what you take from your enemies. Sometimes it's what they accidentally give you while trying to destroy you. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get updates on new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.